Welcome. Welcome everyone to today's webinar, The What, How, and Why of Impact Reporting. I'm Mona Chun with Mebel Transforming Furniture. This webinar is produced by Mebel Transforming Furniture, which supports changemakers across the furniture industry in transitioning to a sustainable, circular, and climate-positive future. We'd like to thank our co-sponsors today, the Good Future Design Alliance, IIDA New York Sustainability Circle, Lot 21, and the New York School of Interior Design. All our links are in the chat. This is the first webinar in our series, Impact Reporting for Change, Building Accountability into the Furniture Industry. The series includes 3 digital action guides and 2 webinars. The first action guide has been published, and you should see that link in the chat as well. Stay tuned for info on the rest of the series at the end of this webinar. Our 3 goals for today's webinar are to help build a fundamental understanding of impact reporting, provide pragmatic steps for getting started with or improving reporting, and to share concrete examples, inspiration, and peer insights to support your next steps in forging a new furniture industry that prioritizes transparency, accountability, and change. We wanted to do this important and complex topic justice by offering an extended 90-minute webinar. We'll be covering the core info in the first 60 minutes. What exactly are impacts and impact reports? Why are impact reports important, and are they worth the time and effort? How do we get started creating or improving our reports, and where do we begin? What should get included? And we'll share again what's next in the series. Thanks to everyone who submitted questions when registering. We hope to address a lot of them in the first hour, and we've added an optional 30 minutes at the end to allow for more questions and some virtual interaction with our guests and your peers. Feel free to add your questions as they arise in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. We won't address questions until the last 30 minutes, so please stay on for the full 90 minutes if you're able. But no worries if you're not. We'll be sharing the video, slides, chat, and Q&A logs, and a list of resources and links after the webinar. I'd like to welcome our guests today. Lucy Crane is the head of sustainability at Modus, where she has guided the company to become one of Britain's most progressive furniture manufacturers. Modus is a British manufacturer of contract furniture, working with some of the world's greatest designers to create enduring, award-winning pieces, united by their craftsmanship and integrity of design. Lucy is also the author of our 3-part action guide on impact reporting. So today she'll be wearing her Modus Impact Reporter-in-Chief hat, as well as her unrelenting pursuit of a more sustainable way forward in the furniture world expert hat. Mark Tremlett is the founder of Natural Mat, which is one of the original champions of the planet in the British manufacturing industry, having begun hand-making beds and mattresses from entirely natural and organic materials 25 years ago from the company's Devon workshop. From day one, Mark has prioritized the use of natural, renewable materials that are sustainable, biodegradable, certified organic where possible, and most importantly, entirely free of all synthetics and chemical fire retardants. Today, Natural Mat serves the retail market in the UK, as well as some of the top hotels around the world. And both Modus and Natural Mat have been awarded B Corp status, considered to be sustainability's gold standard. I'm excited to be joined by these change makers in the industry to hear how they've tackled the reporting process, their strategies and decisions behind initiating, creating, and building their reports, as well as their perspectives on their challenges and successes related to reporting. So let's get started with some basics. What is impact reporting? We're seeing a growing number of furniture companies engaging in impact reporting, from large global companies like IKEA to well-known American retailers like Room and Board, smaller ones like Floyd. And while some have been tracking their impact data for multiple years now, maybe over 10 to 15 years, others, giant companies and startups, have just published their first report. So here's some great examples. We'll be adding links to all the reports that we mentioned today in the resource list that we share after the webinar. So don't worry about not seeing the exact names on those slides. So let's get started with Lucy, with some of the basics. First, what do we mean when we say impacts?
Well, every piece of furniture will have a backstory to it, a journey that it's traveled to get to its end destination. And if we take something really simple, like a wooden table, let's take a teak table, then we need to ask ourselves a whole series of questions to get a full picture of that table's impacts. We need to trace it right back to the forest and ask things like, has the wood been responsibly sourced, or has it led to deforestation and biodiversity loss? What about the rights of the indigenous people in the forest? What about the workers in the supply chain? How have they been treated? Where was the table made? How far have the materials travelled to get to the manufacturing site? What type of energy has been used to run the machines that make the table? How much waste has been created in production? What's the table finished in? These are some of the questions that we would need to ask ourselves, as well as things like, what about the packaging? How's it been delivered to store? And what's in place at end of life? Can it be repaired? Can it be reused or repurposed? And how have workers all the way along the supply chain been affected by things like fair pay, worker health and safety? What's the overall governance of the company selling that product like? How accountable are they? These are the kind of things that lead to impacts associated with a piece of furniture. And there could be positive impacts as well, because it could be a fairly traded item of furniture in a region with low job security and low wages. We need to think about the positive impacts as well as the negative impacts associated with a piece of furniture, and build up a really broad picture about this piece of furniture, so that we can really get a handle on all its impacts all the way through its life cycle.
That's really helpful. And can you tell us, what is an impact report?
An impact report is publicly available. It's usually shared on a company's website. You can usually download it as a PDF. And it shows that a company is taking responsibility for some of the kind of impacts that I've described. So things like responsible wood sourcing, carbon emissions, things like that. It will usually include a strategy to some degree, and it will show that a company has set targets for continuous improvement. And it should focus on a company's key areas of impact and show progress against targets over time. It tells the story of what a company's doing and how well it's performed in terms of sustainability over the course of the past year, and it should help drive a company to do better year on year.
Okay, and with those definitions out of the way, thank you. Let's understand why impact reporting is important. For most companies joining our webinar today, reporting isn't yet mandatory. So I'd like to get into why any company would spend the time and resources to share all this information. Lucy, do you think more companies are starting to see the business case and benefits of reporting?
Definitely. Yeah, we're seeing more and more come out. There's been a flurry of impact reports coming out in the last few months in the UK. And I think that people are spurred on by seeing other people's reports in a kind of, if they can do it, then we can do it. I think it motivates people to do things better and to be more transparent. And it can be very inspiring, because when you're working in the field of sustainability and you see what other companies are doing and how other people have reported, I think it can really inspire you to stretch yourself and do better. And that helps us keep up with the competition. And the other, I mean, the main reason for, I think, for an impact report is that it enables you to set a standard for yourself and continually check against progress internally. So you keep track of where you're at. And the other main benefit, I think, is that it's really an employees market now. And I think that reporting is a big factor in terms of recruitment. I think it was Deloitte that did a study that showed Gen Z in particular really consider a company's purpose when they're looking for a place to work. And people really want to know what a company's values are and ensure that they align with their own when they're making purchasing decisions. And I think you can really see that in certain companies that have done really well, like Patagonia. And I think that it helps to build brand loyalty, and there is a lot of greenwashing going on. And I think reporting gives you a platform to substantiate your claims so that you can rise above the greenwash. And I also think that it enables you to future-proof to a large extent, because when you pull a report together, you have to look at some of the risks that your company's facing and also other opportunities that are presented. And so you inevitably end up making decisions that really help to strengthen your business.
Mm-hmm. And it is also a chance, I think, to drive concrete change within a company. Are you seeing that, Mark? Maybe share an example of a concrete change that Natural Mat has made since doing their reporting. Oh, you're muted.
Hello, everybody. Yes. I mean, I think that, yes, it is a really, I mean, firstly, I would agree with everything that Lucy said. I think that's very clear way of putting everything. I think what it has done is that the concrete change is that, we're setting out our stall and saying, this is us. And these are the 5 elements. We've broke it down. We've got, we came up with we had a session when we started, which I'll talk about later, but we come up with these sort of 5 basic pillars of our sustainability strategy. And that basically, so it changes our business fundamentally, because so we are now guided by these 5 pillars. And so it becomes, the most significant change is that it becomes part of the sort of the DNA of our business. And that now, so everything that we do, we look back to those 5 pillars and we say to ourselves, yes, are we on the right track? Are we being true to our ethos by abiding by those sort of concrete laws that we've set ourselves? And so I think it is a fundamental kind of roots up change to the business, to then have a set of different guiding principles. And those are things that you measure. So we measure we go into measuring our carbon footprint. We go into measuring, what is the waste that we are creating. And by doing these benchmarks, then by setting these standards, then we've got stuff that we can measure against. So I think it is a fundamental business change. So it's a change for the good. So yes, we're very proud to do it.
Yeah. And Lucy, you've talked about Modus having made some changes, specific changes as well, after starting reporting. I think you're muted,
Sorry.
Lucy.
Sorry, the slide that you're showing is from our 2020 impact report, and this is a really good example of when you start to measure things, you can really, you might get a surprise, and you can start to put things in place to move forwards. So this shows our carbon footprint from 2017 to 2020, 3 separate years. And if you look at the 2 pie charts on the left, 2017 to 18 and 18 to 19, you can see a pale lilac-y blue slice of pie. And that was the scope 2 emissions from the electricity used in manufacturing. And we did not expect it to be quite such a large chunk of our scope 1 and 2 emissions. So that led to us putting solar panels on the factory roof, which is why in 2019 you will see that colour completely disappears. So I think when you record things, which is a big part of a report, then you can start to really make some significant changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you referred to scope 2 emissions. If scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions terminology is new to any of our attendees, you'll find a couple of helpful hints. A couple of helpful links in the post-webinar resource list that we will share. That'll explain that. So Mark, in Natural Mat's report, it says we can't ignore the growing environmental impact of the mattress industry, and references your desire to lead a mattress industry revolution. Do you think impact reports can help inspire change across the industry? And with all that Natural Mat and other companies have to do day to day to operate, survive, and thrive, why does industry change matter to you?
Well, traditionally, the mattress industry is quite a wasteful industry. It's an area that it's something I think that people didn't really concentrate on. It's people have been thought about I don't know how they travel and how what they drink their coffee out of, but they probably didn't really consider about what happens to the end of life of the various furniture items. And so I think that we've always been obsessive about the sustainability element for us as a business. Is not only it's how you design the product, and so you need to design it so that it's going to be sort of wholesome and sustainable for the way of life that everybody is going to enjoy as a result of sleeping on it, but also at its end of life, then there's something that you can do with it. And so, and that's something that people really, need to start considering, across the industry wide. We've become so much of a throwaway society, and that shouldn't be the, the model for everybody. So, we always designed our mattresses so that they could be disassembled, so all the component parts can be taken away, and they can go into separate recycling streams. And so, you know, we design a mattress where it's zero to landfill, so nothing from our mattresses should ever go into landfill. Whereas if you think about it from industry wide, about 80% of mattresses in the UK do go into landfill. And you think about the size of the mattress, and you think about the size of the hole you've got to dig. So that has a huge environmental impact. And then not only that, it's the materials that traditionally used within the mattress industry. They are, you know, generally they are, a lot of them are oil-based derivatives. And so these are materials that are not sustainable and are going to be using up the world's fossil fuel resources. And that is not a sustainable way in which to sort of carry on a manufacturing process. So by championing how you might do things differently, you know, we hope that, you know, we're a tiny business, but hope we'll get some focus on who we are and what we do. And hopefully some other people out there might think, okay, all right, maybe we'll do some things slightly differently too.
That's great. And I saw on your website this a picture of this massive washing machine for the mattresses that you had identified. I loved the look of that. Imagine if we had those machines everywhere.
Yes, we this is a bit of a world first, actually. We didn't invent the washing machine ourselves, but we found a man called Arthur in Liverpool who invented the world's first washing machine, and that enabled us to become part of our Mattress for Life program. So you have 3 different options at the end of the life of your mattress. Either you can bring it back to us and we refurbish, or we will disassemble it and recycle all the component parts. And those components can then go into making new items for the customer, or we get a value of the credit from the items that we recover, and that goes towards a new mattress. And then the third thing is donate. So a lot of the mattresses that would come back from our customers, they might have a more philanthropic kind of view about what needs to happen. And one of our sort of pillars that we have is healthy sleep for all. And so our customers, if the mattress is still pretty half decent, then we send it off to Arthur in his amazing washing machine in Liverpool, and it will get a completely clean bill of health after going through the machine. Sadly, it doesn't look like a massive tumble dryer like we have on the thing. It's a little bit different to that, but that's effectively what you get out of the back of it. Anyway, and then out of the back of that, so then there's a perfectly clean and healthy mattress with a ticket with giving it its bill of health, and then that goes into furniture poverty charities in Liverpool, Oldham, and Manchester, and there's so many people who don't have a mattress to sleep on at all, and so imagine how you can try and sort of survive and have a sort of, you know, a healthy day if you haven't managed to have any sleep. So trying to help alleviate that problem in our society is one thing that we're very keen on doing, and that's where that's washing machine comes in. So, you know, we're very pleased with that invention.
Yes. If you get a chance for our attendees, if you can find that picture, it's quite impressive on the Natural Mat website. So just to recap on this, why is impact reporting important? I think I'd bucket all of what we've just discussed into 3 big themes for why reporting is important. There's a strong business case for it. It can help drive change and progress in a company and can inspire change across the industry. I'd like to move to how to get started. Mark, Natural Mat just published its 3rd report. So can you take us back to when you first decided to create an impact report? What was the driving force behind that decision?
Yes, well, I mean, it comes back to sort of some of the principles that Lucy talked about in the beginning. But so we knew as a business we were always at the forefront of making a green, sustainable mattress. But we knew that we could do more. We knew that there was a significant amount of greenwashing going on in the industry, and it was an opportunity. We thought, okay, here's an opportunity to really nail all our colors to the mast and tell everybody what the great things that we're doing. But also, we think there's a lot more that we can do. So the first part of the process was we engaged some sustainability consultants and we embarked on a process of developing what our strategy actually is. And so this is where, you know, we went through this brainstorming. We spent 2 days locked away in a room, carefully considering who we are, what we do, where we've come from, where we want to go, and really what is the sort of the fundamentals of how we can be the most sustainable sort of mattress and bed making business. And out of that process came our sustainability strategy, and that is really sort of the core of getting properly started. Without knowing where you're going, that's what you need first.
Yeah, and I'd like to get into that a little bit later. Lucy, what motivated Modus to tackle this endeavor?
I can't remember when we first decided to build a report. It was something that we were thinking about for a long time. I think it was part of the furniture industry sustainability program audit, and there was a section in there about reporting that I started to look into. But we started with carbon footprinting back in 2017, and it kind of followed on from there. And I think we had about 2 years worth of data before we started on our first report. And it was partly, we had a clear strategy, and I think that we wanted to show how we've been using that strategy to move the company forwards in terms of sustainability. And I think that was one of the reasons that we started reporting, to show that we were really serious about it, and that we meant business.
That's great. And
yes,
you've mentioned some inspiration.
I did. Yes, I did. So Benchmark were a really early inspiration for me. They have beautiful reports. They're very simple, and they were one of the first manufacturers who started carbon footprinting their products and producing environmental product declarations. And obviously the industry has really moved in that direction in Europe, for sure. So they were really quite early adopters of this approach. And the other company that I think were really instrumental in me thinking we really need to do this were Vitra. Vitra have got a fabulous biodiverse site that you can see on the front cover of this year's 22 report. But what they do really, really well is their graphics. They're beautiful, and I think this is a really good one to start with having a look at, because they keep it really simple, and I absolutely love their graphics. So yeah.
Me too. I love the color. And so now that we're inspired to get started, Lucy, how do we put that into action? Let's break that process down into some practical steps.
Okay, well, yeah. As Mark said, he shut himself away to develop a strategy, but also in reporting, I think you really need to gather a team in and sit down and set some time aside to brainstorm. And as much as you can, you need to get that team, make that team as diverse as possible. So try and get people from different departments and different backgrounds, because that way you're more likely to capture everything. And then sit down and brainstorm and go through the process of thinking about all the impacts that can build up throughout your furniture's life cycle, as I discussed in the beginning. Things like biodiversity loss and carbon emissions, labour issues, toxic materials, all those kinds of things, and write them all down. And then start to think about which of those are really key to your company. So if you're using a lot of wood, for example, then sustainable sourcing would be really, really key. And you need to start to sift through and prioritize which of these impacts are really key for your company. Which is why I picked out this slide, because this is from Technion's 2024 ESG report, and they've been really clear about the process that they went through in terms of deciding what their impacts were and which ones ranked the highest. And this is a really important step. So you need to decide not only what your impacts are, but which ones are of the highest priority, and start to rank them all in order. And then from that you'll decide what data you need to be recording, and that is always the toughest point, because you will need a year's worth of data in order to report. And where you get that from can vary a lot. And for today, I'm just keeping it really simple, because we are going to go into detail in that in part 2 of our action guide, where you get the data from. But for today, I would just say that it's really important to keep it really simple and try and look for data that you already have, rather than trawling through all your invoices. You need to be quite smart about where you're going to get that data from. And you can always build on what you're reporting on, and get things set in place for the following year, so that it's easier to gather the data next time around. And I think the next slide has got some examples of data that you already have and you're not going to need to hunt around for. You just need to go to your human resources department, or if you're really small, you need to look in your files and look at how your team breaks down into things like age demographics, women in management and senior roles, and this, although this does present a slightly tricky challenge, because you need to set a one day in the financial year that you're going to take this information from, because it will fluctuate a bit throughout the year. So you choose one day. For me, I chose the last day of my reporting year, and then this data is pretty straightforward, and it's an important part of your report. So I think the main thing that I would say is stop thinking about what you don't know and focus on what you do know, because there will be a lot of data there that you can get your hands on. I think there's a couple of examples here. So this is Avocado Green's impact report, and they're reporting on 2 years worth of landfill diversion. So that's waste that isn't going into landfill. And they've also been really transparent about what their goal is. So you can see that progress. And it probably wasn't that difficult for them to get this data. And then you've got another example there from Vitra on staff training, again, which should be fairly easy, a lot easier than some other data to get your hands on. And once you've got 1 year's worth of data, then you can have a pretty good idea about what was missing or what was really hard to get. And I think that this is the time when you really need to make friends with people in your organization and go around and ask for their assistance in providing the data for you. So you will get to know a lot of departments. Data is the biggest challenge. Don't be put off. Look for what you've already got and keep it really simple in your first year.
Yeah, I think those are great tips. As the saying goes, what gets measured gets done, or at least gets managed. So if you can track it, you can analyze it, and then you can change it. So I'd like to turn back to Mark and your pillars, your strategy. On the Natural Map website, it says you undertook a process that culminated in publishing your first formal sustainability strategy and impact report in 2022. Can you tell us how long that process took from inspiration to commitment to reporting to publication? What was the biggest surprise in that process?
Well, it probably took us something like 8 months, I think, probably to get to our first report. And it was about, and as I said, it was taking the decision that we needed to, we've always been very transparent as a business. So we've always been very, totally open about what goes into the mattresses that we make and the beds and everything that we do. We tell everybody exactly what goes in, and we're very clear about where everything has come from. So I think that transparency is really, really important for us. And I think everybody who undertakes a report, they have to be prepared, for that, to show that level of transparency. Anyway, so it's really an extension of that in terms of, so what we decided to do was undertake this process. We engaged consultants, we had this brainstorming session, and then putting the report together probably took another 7 months. And once we've defined the strategy, it's a question about how you lay that strategy out in a really clear and meaningful way that is going to be digestible for your audience. And that takes, and that does take a lot of skill, and it does take an awful lot of hard work. So I think that another thing that's very important is that if you're going to do an impact report, you've got to be really committed to it, and you've got to just make sure that you're going to put enough resource behind it, and then choosing the right team as well. I know Lucy's talked about that as well, but getting the right team behind to make sure that you can communicate everything that you want to do in a really clear way. Anyway, but yeah, I think it was sort of end of Feb 22 that we did our very first report. So yeah, anyway, and it's great. It feels very good to have got the first one away, and now we're on to number 3.
Yeah, I really appreciate how clearly defined those pillars are, and also you've mentioned the value of the expert external consultants who might see things the team doesn't see, or who aren't wedded to your internal boxes or buckets. So
Yeah, it's really
out.
important to be. Yeah, the nice thing about having the people who've done this a lot before is that it asked you sort of, lots of questions. Not all of them are easy questions, so it does make you think. It does make you sort of reconsider, how you want to sort of what you're doing, and B, how you want to move forward to achieve your goals. So I think it should be a hard process, because you should be being asked difficult questions, and it's not always the people that are in your own organization that will do that. So often it takes an external pair of eyes to sort of to highlight the areas where you need to look and do better. And the other great skill is how you get that information on a page. And so we used an external graphic designer who specializes in doing impact reports. It's pretty much all she does is impact reports. And so she understands entirely the market. She understands entirely the audience. And a lot of people might have an impact just go to their regular graphic designer. But I think that, I think the experience and the expertise of the person that we worked with really does show. And it really helped us in communicating clearly all of the things that that we wanted to say. So I think that coming back to building the right team, A, going to question you, B, push you B, push you to come up with the right decisions, and then thirdly, how you actually visualize that in a document so it's clear to all. I think it's a very important process.
And who is the person who locked the door to keep you all in focused on it?
Oh, yeah, it was probably me. I probably, locked the door and swallowed the key.
Can I move us on to some of what to include? So we've decided, Lucy, so you've decided to take the plunge. You have a strategy and you're gathering your data. The next big challenge is knowing what to include in your report. And as you've said, where on earth do you begin?
Yeah, so I would say start in a way, might seem backwards, but I would say start with the contents page, because you need to know what you're going to be putting into the report. So look at some content pages from other companies. This one is Floyd, and I think they've got a really good balance between, it's really simple, but it's also quite full. So this covers off everything about their company, their strategy, their targets, but it is very, very simple. So this is a really good example. The next slide, I think, is this is a British company called the Furniture Practice. They are a furniture dealer and they're a B Corp company. So they've organised their report in the same way that you would that you report to the B Lab, which is the assessment arm of the B Corporation. So they have divided it up into governance, environment, workers, which is their people, community, and customers, which is their clients and projects. And it just, once you start to organize it in a really simple way, it can kind of keep moving forward from there.
So I see, sorry, there's the Vestria's one. Yeah.
Really simple. And then I think if you go on to the next slide, Mona, I think we've got a timeline. So this is Natural Mat's timeline. This is a really nice way of setting out your progress so far. And the next slide, again, I think is another timeline, which also shows some targets for the future going right into 2040. And then the next slide is from us. We do have a timeline, but this was just to give an example of, if you don't have a timeline, maybe if you're a startup, it's just nice to set out in your impact report a little bit about who you are, what you do, and just make it clear for your reader, just in a nutshell, who you are and how you got to where you are. So, and then I think if you go on to the next slide, this I think is really key. And I know that Mark and Peter in Natural Mat are both in their impact reports, they give a personal message. And I think a message from the CEO or the MD, and this one's Technion. So they've also got their sustainability team. But I think it really helps to get buy-in for the person who's producing the report when the business owner or the CEO is facing the report, if you like. Then they have to, I mean, they have to sign off on the targets anyway, but their face is on the report. So it helps to drive change internally and really keep that that buy-in at the top. I think I've got one more example, which is Vestra again. This is a Norwegian company, and they've got a glossary alongside their message from their CEO, which is a really, really good idea, which I'm going to steal for my next report. I really like that one. There's a little bit there about scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions as well for people afterwards in the links. So yeah, those are some of the key things that I would say help. And then the bit that your boss is going to like the most are the highlights. This is from Vestra again. Lovely graphics, really playful, even though they're talking about some quite serious things, their scope 3 emissions. And the highlights page, this one is from Furniture Practice. It should show your achievements and your accomplishments over the year. And in a way, it's going to be the favourite page of your sales team. This is the one page that they're going to keep going back to and saying, we did this last year. And this one, again, this is arranged around the 5 impact areas of being a B Corp. So,
and before you go forward, I'm going to pull us back, Giovanna, 3 slides, I think, to William Sonoma, CEO, because I inserted that one late last night because I'm a sucker for a female CEO. I had to add that in.
Yes, yes, balance it out a bit. Yes, and this in this report, she goes into quite a lot of detail actually on which would make, I think, some CEOs a bit nervous. It can just be a message saying that you're really backing your team, but there's quite a lot of detail in her message there, which is typical of their impact reports.
That's great. And then you were talking about organizing the report, after the highlights, around your strategy.
Yes, and I think that Mark has actually explained this really well. This is how I did it. I organised the report around our 6 key areas of impact and the goals that we have to reduce those. And I think that's really similar approach to how Mark has done it.
Mm-hmm. So these sections set the stage in the report, which helps ground the readers. Next, the majority of the report is actually a look back on a company's sustainability journey over the past year. Can you walk us through a few examples of how reports cover that?
Yes, the main purpose of a report is to be transparent about your key areas of impact and hopefully show a reduction year on year. So there will be some metrics within the report that are the real nuts and bolts of it and are likely to cover key areas of impact, such as carbon emissions. And this one shows waste and waste reduction over a year. And you do need to have some quantitative data. Sometimes you see impact reports that don't have any quantitative data in them. And I think that people want to see that you are recording things so that you can manage them, right? And the metrics, as you report year after year, will become a story of progress on what you are managing to achieve. And you need to evaluate your progress against your targets and ask yourself whether or not you've been meeting your targets. And it should be really, really quick and easy to see. So this one is our scope 1 and 2 carbon emissions. And you don't need to read all that text on the left. You can see that that's going down year on year. So as Mark said earlier, the way that this information is presented is really key. And I think that the information needs to be engaging, because carbon emissions going down, that's great, but it doesn't really engage with the reader. And I think this page from the Natural Map report is great, because you can straight away see what's been saved in terms of single-use plastics. You can see what the objective is. You can even see two guys in process of delivering, and that, just those three things instantly tells a story to the reader, and that's a really, really key part of an impact report. It needs to be engaging, and it needs to be easy to absorb, and it needs to tell a story.
Mm-hmm. I love this page because it does share data and numbers and also tells a story. Mark, we looked at examples of quantifiable data and the importance of sharing those numbers in an accessible way. But storytelling in impact reports is also important. And one section where we get more qualitative information about a company's commitments is in their initiatives for social good. And you talked about this a little bit already, your Healthy Sleep for All initiative. But why does it feel important to include this type of work in the reporting?
I think it's important because we feel that we have we have a responsibility to the wider community. You could just be focused on your industry and what you're doing, but also it's about, we all live in the same world. We're all part of a great community, and it's what you can do to help everybody that touches not only just your immediate stakeholders, but people you can share your, it's trying to share your expertise amongst everybody. So, so the Healthy Sleep for All covers quite a lot of aspects of that. And so, yes, the Mattress for Life, that's the donation part of it. We're trying to sort of give people who don't have that opportunity to have any, have a decent night's sleep at all, giving the opportunity to have a really good night's sleep. And hopefully the impact and the benefit of that will hopefully be sort of transforming. We have our own resident sleep expert, and we are very happy to share the tips and advice of what she brings, and we want to try and disseminate that information as wide as possible. And if it can be useful to other people out there, then great, that's fantastic. That's part of it's part of our duty as being kind of expert bed and mattress makers to help share that information. And then, then there are other aspects of it, like this sort of the program that, a couple of programs we've got going on here, the Cotton Lives On, that is where, where it's different players in the same industry, where we've got the combined interest of tackling waste and using our collective expertise to help recycle that waste and then create other things out of that. And that's what that particular program is. So it's a really interesting project, and we're delighted to be part of it. And again, it means it comes at the culmination in our particular case is achieving a mattress that's made out of these recycled materials that then gets donated into various other charity partnerships. So yes, it's an opportunity to work within a wider community and a wider range of stakeholders. And I think that's also, an opportunity that, that the impact report gives us.
Yeah. And that's really helpful to think about. And this is, we have another example from Benchmark about their apprenticeship program. And what I really like about the Healthy Sleep for All initiative, and this one is, I find it especially meaningful when a company has social impact projects that are directly tied to their core work. Lucy, I'm going to move to Lucy. So what happens after you've gathered your data and you find you didn't make as much progress as you had hoped?
That will happen. I think that it could be really tough, actually. So the example that I given you here is about packaging use. And I think what Mark's doing is fantastic, plastic-free deliveries, but it's easier to deliver a mattress without plastic than a table, because you have those sharp edges and you need to protect it properly, and protecting your product is the most important thing. But when you see that you have not been able to eradicate single-use plastics or something like that, when you see you've missed your target, I think that can act as a bit of a catalyst and concentrate your efforts on that area of impact for the following year. So you're not always going to meet your targets. That's something that you need to get used to, but you need to keep them ambitious, and you need to keep moving forwards, and you need to focus on areas that need extra effort where you need to.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of targets, I'd love to skip to a modus example of how you how you set targets,
Okay.
and
So
why, how this mattered to you.
Yeah, this one was, so we were using a water-based lacquer, and we decided to get our products VOC tested. That means that they are tested to see what volatile organic compound emissions off gas from those products. And we were going for a very high standard of Indoor Advantage Gold, and we set ourselves a target to have them tested by Q3 2023, and because we had published it in our impact report, I was definitely going to make sure we were going to stick to that. In fact, I think we did it at the end of Q2. But when you've written that, you've put that line in the sand, it really pushes you to meet it. It really pushed me, definitely.
It's always great to have those goals. And so once you have set your targets for the next year, what else can you do to drive change? What comes next?
You need a roadmap. So you need your targets, and you need some short-term targets, and you need some long-term targets. But there's no point having a long-term target if you do not set a roadmap to achieving those targets. So this example is from Frederica's sustainability report, and I really like the way that they have honed in on their impacts and some short-term targets and some long-term targets, because it's only by building that action plan that you're actually going to drive any degree of change. And some people don't like being transparent about their action plan, but I think if you really want to drive change at scale, then you have to share how this can be achieved.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So I'd love to just recap this section on what to include. We'll just leave the slide up here a bit because we're already at the top of the hour, and I'd love to wrap up this segment before the Q&A with each of you taking a minute each to share final words of wisdom for any company looking to embark on reporting. You want to start with Mark?
Thanks, Mana.
Words of wisdom.
Yes, yes. Well, I think I think it's been a very good webinar, and I think you've laid things out very clearly. But I think from the only thing, I think what I would just, my words of wisdom, for whatever they are worth, just being really clear about what you're trying to achieve. That's the number one thing. Just being really clear about setting out your goals, and then what you need to do is you need to then make sure you could put enough resource behind the whole process, because there's nothing worse than having a sort of, Lucy's mentioned this, but having a date and then missing the date and all the rest, because you haven't got it, because you haven't got the right resources behind it to achieve. Otherwise, the whole thing is just continue to drift, and that's really frustrating. So making sure you've got the resources, and at this, and part of that resourcing, make sure you've got the right team. You know, I talked about choosing the right consultants and then choosing the right person that can help visualize, you know, all those steps and all those things that you want to sort of you want to get into your impact report. And then just getting your head down and doing it, you know. Yeah, you know, the hardest part is making the decision to start in the first place. But once you're there, and you know, it has been, you know, my final word of wisdom is it's been a very, very, very good process for us as a business, and we have just changed completely as a business as a result of embarking on this procedure. So I can only recommend it.
That is great to hear. Lucy, final words of wisdom before our Q&A.
I would say look around on the internet, look at loads of other reports, not just from the furniture industry, and gather them all up in a big folder and use them to help build your report. Copy things you like and let it kind of guide you. And hopefully there's some examples here that people will be able to draw from. I think Mark's point about get an expert to handle the graphics, 100%, that's really key. And the other thing is finding the time. It will drift if you do not set aside at least one day a week and prioritize it, or it's not going to happen. And then the other thing I'd say is setting targets is really important and difficult, which we're going to tackle a bit more in our action guide too. But just to sum up, I would say that an impact report is really useful tool to drive positive change at company level. But because it's publicly available, a really good report can reach across the whole furniture industry and even inspire change across other sectors. So I think people just need to get started, get a move on, and start telling people about all the good things that they've been doing.
Great. Well, I love ending with that call to action. Before we go into Q&A, I wanted to share what's coming up next in our series, Impact Reporting for Change, Building Accountability into the Furniture Industry. So part 1 of the Action Guide series is live, and the link is in the chat. And then stay tuned for part 2, where we'll be diving deeper into how to identify, understand, and prioritize the impacts, and where to find the information you need to build your report. Part 3, where we will be exploring the impact reporting as a tool for creating change within your company, turning data into a strategic plan that becomes a roadmap for change. And keep your eyes out for the save the date and details on the next webinar in the series. I hope you'll be able to stay on with us for the Q&A segment. If you're not able to stay on, again, we'll be sharing all of these resources, videos, slides, chat, Q&A, and a list. You'll get a pop-up to fill out a survey when you log off. Your feedback is very important to us, so please take 2 minutes to fill it out. And feel free to submit questions to get started with in the Q&A. We have some pre-submitted questions that we can try to address as well. So I'm going to jump into a question that was pre-submitted. What are the differences between impact reporting and the typical company sustainability report? Lucy?
So I think a lot of people create sustainability reports, but kind of gloss over their impacts. I mean, those terms are used interchangeably. But I think an impact report looks more closely at key areas of impact and ways of driving them down.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be what I would describe as the main difference between those two.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And there are companies, I think, that call their reports ESG reports as well. So there are a few different names. It's
Yeah.
similar.
ESG reports are usually for bigger companies. So the E is environmental, S is social, G is governance. And usually when people create an ESG report, they're reporting against a particular framework. Our reporting is voluntary. So you can opt for a specific framework, or you can report however you choose. If you're a larger company and reporting is mandatory, then you might have to report in line with a certain framework.
There's a question from a participant here. Mark and Lucy, how much time do you spend every year on getting your report together? How do you integrate it with your day-to-day?
Well, it's good, very good question. It depends. Well, we have a sustainability officer who works for us, who spends, and her role is split. So half of it is on a sort of helping on a marketing role, and the other half is on the more of the operational side of things. And it probably starts in the process starts in the autumn, and probably culminates sort of January, February time with a report. So it's a sort of 4-month process, really, where they actually sort of dealing with the report itself. But obviously, as we know, data is an important part of it. So measuring it, so the measuring, is happening all the time. So arguably, you never stop. Once you've started on it, you never stop working on it, because you're always collating the data that you're going to be reporting on at the end of the year. But actually sort of starting working on the pages and starting to pull together the ideas about what it's going to look like and all the rest of it, that starts in the autumn, and then it culminates into January, February time.
I would say that if you can get the data, once you've got the data, because that's the really tricky one, once you've got the data and you've got a graphic designer, it's going to take 2 weeks of solid work, I would say. So what's that? 80 hours split, by however many people you've got. I would say it would take quite a long time for your first one. And subsequent ones will be quicker because you'll know what you're doing. So, yeah.
There was a question about impact reporting this was submitted earlier, for furniture repair. How does that work? Have you done some of that, Lucy?
For furniture, do you mean
Repair.
remanufacture?
Hmm?
Repair and refurbishment and so on.
And I think Mark talked a little bit about this for the mattresses as well. How you're tracking that repair part.
Yeah, there are some companies working in the UK in office furniture refurbishment. Haven't seen any impact reports yet, specifically from companies offering that service.
No, nor have I actually, but it doesn't mean. I mean, who knows? I'm sure coming down the tracks at us will be somebody who's going to do that. But yes, we work. That's part of our process now. But I haven't seen anybody reporting on exactly that particular part of the industry. But hey, it's interesting, and I'm sure somebody will come along and do it.
And there's another question from an attendee. Mark, you mentioned working with consultants. Any tips for how to find the right consultant?
Well, I suppose it's somebody you got, you're going to spend quite a lot of time with them. So you've got to be, and you've got to be happy that, they're going to ask the right questions and challenge you, I suppose, really. So, I think, you've got to, you spend quite a lot of time with these people. Or we certainly did. So making sure you get on with them really well, making sure that they are people that understand you and understand your business. And they've got a proven track record of doing it before. Also look at their previous, the previous companies they've worked for and what those companies are saying. And then in terms of the graphic designer, I mean, we were led to the graphic designer by the sustainability consultants, and so that really helped. And we did look at other graphic designers, and it became very clear very quickly that actually we did need to go with the expert because we were going to get so much more value out of it. She was a lot more expensive, but actually, yes, she was really worth it. So, it definitely, we think it's really paid off, and the whole process of working with a team that's a proven team was extremely beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes we've seen with consultants, you get what you pay for when you're deciding whether to pay someone who's a little bit higher.
We probably had 3 pitches. I think we had 3 pitches, and we chose one out of one out of those 3. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, as an example.
Yeah. So there's another question.
There are a lot of people doing it now. There's quite a lot of people out there. It's become this has become quite a busy market.
Mm-hmm. I think we have some consultants who are participating in this call. So speak up if you're on the call, join the chat, tell us about your services for others who are looking. There's another question here. Have you run into resistance from peers or colleagues in your company who are reluctant to share secrets about their department's impacts? How do you recommend working through that?
Yes, it's the roadmap. That's the bit that people are a bit reluctant to share, because there might be things that are competitive advantage in there, and so people don't really want to make that public knowledge. But I think sustainability is the one bit of your company that you are duty bound to share. You have to share, because there's absolutely no point in doing this on your own. It has to be everybody joining hands and moving forwards together. So that's the kind of thing that I say. If I meet any, oh, shall we say that bit? Yeah, we will. So yeah.
And
I think it's
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say we had pockets of resistance over a couple of things, but really, yeah, come back to its roadmap. Telling everybody in the whole organization about what you're doing. And when they understand what you're actually doing, what the big picture is, then I think that overall, then they're much more willing to participate. If you come straight out with a cold question that they're not expecting, then they might think, oh, hang on, why do they want that information? Why have I got to answer that? But actually, if you say, look, this is the process, this is what we're doing, this is what we're going to be asking you, and and it's all going to happen in the next 3 months, and then then they're all kind of forewarned is forearmed, and then you're going to hopefully get less resistance.
Mm-hmm. We have a couple of questions that maybe are not as specific to impact reporting, but about plastics and packaging. I would love to know from Catherine, I would love to know the companies that produce bioplastics, like the ones Natural Net uses, made from potato starch and sugarcane. And a follow-up to my plastic alternatives packaging question, why aren't these more widely adopted by companies, and what are the barriers to entry? And if you or others have resources to share, please go ahead and put them in the chat on that. So, but Mark and Lucy.
Yeah, we could do that. No, both of the, we use, we buy from 2 organizations. One is the potato starch we started using, I think, in 2007 or even 2006, which is quite early days. And that's what we wrapped all our mattresses in the day. We're all wrapped in potato starch. polymer, and then with a recycled cardboard box. So we said all our packaging was recyclable or biodegradable, which was, you know, a great message. In 2006, I think we were pretty early at doing that. And so it was quite different in those days. And now it's quite heartening to see that, you know, you buy something online, and invariably it will turn up in a similar type of biodegradable material, which is great to see. But it's taken quite a long time. I mean, you know, so it's another sort of 17 years down the road, and it's finally starting happening. It's starting to be it's almost becoming an industry standard, which is very good to see. And then yes, and then just through the sort of technicalities of, you know, what is going to work for what, then we also have a sugarcane polymer for a different type of bag that we use. But ideally, you know, we try and, you know, so when our retail, in our sort of what we call our bedroom retail side, you know, I've been trying to move away from using any plastic for our retail deliveries, you know, for years and years and years and years. And so we use these big canvas bags now for all our retail deliveries, where possible. You know, sometimes we're delivering to a building site, and the guys say, "Oh, please, you know, don't unwrap the mattress and leave it here without anything on it, because it's still a building site." So, you know, it's we can't do that in 100% of the cases. And sometimes we're delivering to a hotel. The hotel's not ready, and they want the mattress to be covered. So they need some form of protection on it, and so we can't leave the bag. We can't always leave the bags there. You know, you do actually need an awful lot. You know, the bigger the business grows, the more canvas bags you need, and you need an awful lot of them. So we've got a very large room full of canvas bags now. Yes, very happy to share, and I can circulate in due course some contacts. They're all in the UK. So but I'm sure there will be similar types of businesses in the US. It's a question of really probably just doing your research. But I'm sure that the same thing will exist, you know, across the pond.
Yeah, we're not a retail business, and that makes it a very, very different kettle of fish, because as Mark said, you can't deliver furniture or mattresses to a site. We did think about using bioplastics, but if you deliver products to site in bioplastics, and that bioplastic gets mixed with the standard plastic, it contaminates the entire recycling potential of the plastic. So we decided to stick with ordinary plastic for the time being on some products, because the risk of contaminating the whole plastic recycling skip on a site is too great. And also, always, the most important thing is to protect your piece of furniture, because the largest impacts are not in the packaging, but they're in the furniture that's been produced. We also thought about bags, but that was also not practical for us for some of the same reasons, and also because of the embodied impacts in a bag. Unless you're 100% going to get it back, there's less impacts in plastic. So you have to kind of weigh things up.
Okay, interesting. So complicated with plastics. Another question from a participant: can you give an example or two of how you track down less available data that's indirect, like electricity generation, or what happens at the end of furniture's first life, or wood sourcing?
Yeah, you've got to go to the invoices. Most of the information you want will be on an invoice. So it's quite a painful process if you have to go back over a year's worth of data and get all the invoices from your system. But that is what you'll have to do for energy, unless you have half-hourly data coming in. If you're a manufacturer, you're using a lot of energy, you'll have half-hourly electricity consumption data coming in. So that's easy.
End of life. How do you track that? Or are you tracking it? You've seen companies that have been able to track the end of life?
Well, you would have to have your products marked in some way in order to be able to see complete visibility of end of life. I'm not sure who's doing that yet. But the other option is a take back system, which is what we offer, and Natural Mat offer with their closed loop. And we do see we're starting to see some things coming back now, because we've been going for a long time. So we do see the odd thing coming back. But I don't think we have the technology to track end of life of furniture yet. But I could be wrong.
No, I think everything that disappears whistles out of our door is very hard to know exactly where it's going to end up. Like anything, any kind of retail, we have no control. We have control over immediate where it's going, but we have very little control over everything that we send out, unless it comes back to us, and then we have complete control over it. And obviously, we haven't been making we've been making nursery mattresses for a long time. As a different kind of rule for nursery mattresses to what we call bedroom, which is for adults. Yeah, we are starting to see a sort of a steady trickle of things that we have made maybe 5, 7, 8, 9 years ago coming back to us to be refurbished. And then that's nice. Then we start to accumulate some data on it. But it is still, we do make quite good mattresses, so generally people keep them quite a long time, and so they do last a bit. So the better you make it, the longer you wave goodbye to it, so you won't see it that soon. Likewise with Lucy's furniture. It's great furniture, it's going to last a long time. So the good thing is you don't need to see it back. That's great. It's a sign of doing it well in the first place. But yes, maybe there is some sort of tagging system that might crop up in the future, whereby it enables you to know and have a sort of visibility on where things are going and how they're ending up. But it's certainly not there at the moment.
Yes, not there yet. And maybe that's a good question to end on. Someone asked, what metrics do clients want measured the most? Are clients interested in the concept of, well, what do they want to measure the most? And I think I'm curious where you think is the next, what's the next frontier in impact reporting? Are we going to see specific issues that companies are going to look at or be required? What's next for you in impact reporting?
Scope 3 is where everyone's at, I think. So your Scope 1 emissions are from your company-owned vehicles and wood pellets, oil in your heating systems and so on. Scope 2 is your purchased power, which is mostly electricity, and Scope 3 is everything else. Very difficult to measure, but I think that's where we're at in the UK and Europe. Large companies are going to have to report on Scope 3 under the CSRD reporting. So everyone is going to gradually shift towards Scope 3 reporting, which has got 15 different emissions categories. It's not easy.
What is CSRD for those who don't know?
Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. That's an EU thing. So it doesn't cover the UK or the USA unless you are trading 150 million 40 million of net profit, I think, in the EU. So it's for pretty large enterprises. But it always starts big and then it trickles down. So we will see Scope 3 reporting coming down. So people should just, embrace it and start finding out what it is and get ready.
Yes, I would agree. Yeah, scope 3 is the big beast, and it's the very hard one. That's very hard to grapple with that. So getting your head around how you're going to tackle scope 3 is always a challenge. So yeah, and it's not for the faint-hearted. So yes, the quicker that people get onto it, the better, really, because it's not impossible, but just setting out, you know, what it is and how and what that looks like for your business, because everyone is going to be each you've got to build a model, and each one is going to look a little bit different depending on what your business is. So yeah, that is going to be, I agree, that's the big thing that's coming down the tracks at us.
So we will be covering some of that in our action guide part 2, and you'll see in the resource list an article on describing the scopes, and if you want to learn more, you can watch the video of our last webinar on a carbon footprint of furniture. We'll share those links in the coming days. But I would love to wrap up by thanking all of you for being here. Thank you so much to our speakers, Lucy and Mark, for sharing your expertise and insightfulness and inspiration. We'd love to also thank our co-sponsors for being formidable peers in this journey. And I would like to personally thank the team behind the scenes, Giovanna, Toshma, Sim, and Michael, for the seamless support. Again, we'll send a link of all of these resources, videos, and slides. Please fill out the survey that will pop up when you're logging off. That's helpful for us. And we will look out for the date for the next webinar. We hope to see you next time. Thank you all.